Hello everybody. This session is on project scheduling. So first of all, we will talk about what scheduling is. Then we will see how to prepare an activity network. Then we will see what is program evaluation review technique. Then how to estimate the project duration, that is critical path method. And finally, we will see what is a Gantt chart. So first, let us see what is project scheduling all about. The scheduling means identifying the activities or the tasks that are required to complete the project. If there are tasks which can be broken down into subtasks, they are broken down into subtasks or maybe into activities. So the basic thing, the first thing which we got to do in project scheduling is to identify the tasks and the subtasks. The next point that comes into consideration is to determine the dependency among the different tasks. The dependency means which task is to be done when. Sometimes it happens two or more tasks may be or can be done simultaneously, and certain tasks cannot be started before the completion of certain tasks. So this sort of a dependency has to be determined before we go for scheduling. The time estimate is also an important part. The time duration for completion of each activity is also and part of scheduling. Once the activities are identified, the interdependence and the time duration, we got to allocate resources to the activities, and we got to plan the starting date and the ending dates of the various activities. Definitely, it will be dependent on the time duration required to complete an activity. The start and the ending dates are necessary. And then we determine the critical path. What is a critical path? The critical path is the chain of activities that determines the duration of the project. Any project has certain activities which are critical to it. So a critical path determines the duration of the project. That means a project duration cannot be lesser than the one determined by the critical path. So as we have seen that the activity in scheduling was to determine the tasks. So work breakdown structure is one of the way how we try to determine the tasks. It is a terminology, in fact. It is used to decompose a given tasks recursively into smaller activities. We can prepare a WBS with a notation by starting with the problem to be solved, then breaking down into modules or activities, bigger activities. Then we break down those bigger activities into smaller activities, and we prepare a tree sort of a structure, which is termed as the work breakdown structure for the project or for an activity or for an maybe task. So the root of the tree is labeled by the problem name, and each of the node of the tree is broken down into smaller activities, as I already explained. And each activity is recursively decomposed up to the leaf level in such a way that each activity at the leaf node takes maybe approximately 2 weeks to develop. So such should be the refinement or the broken down into steps or the granularity according to the work breakdown structure. So let us see an example here of an MIS, which shows maybe the MIS, any MIS application is the root, that is the problem we want to solve. And we have the main tasks, requirement specification, designing, coding, testing, and documentation. This is not an exhaustive list, you can increase. So the next step, requirement specification, it is not shown in the diagram, but we can decompose the requirement specification into maybe 3 sub activities. Like one is requirement collection, next requirement in the analysis, and then the preparation of SRS document, the system requirement specification document. So that can be divided into three sub activities. The design activity here, as shown, can be subdivided into 2 more activities, like database part design and the GUI part design. Coding also can be divided. It's because of the space we have not given all the sub activities. So this is how we build the tree structure in case of work breakdown structure. Example, this is an example. This is what is the basic of identification of activities and sub activities. Next, we will see how we represent these in an activity network. Though we have already seen that scheduling requires identification plus estimation of the duration of the activities and determine the interdependencies. So all these things has to be represented diagrammatically, and those diagrams which represent all these things diagrammatically is termed as the activity network. Let us see how it is represented in an activity network. There are 2 examples given over here. Let us see the first one. On the left hand side, we can see a list which shows activity on this one side and the predecessor to the other side. Predecessor means the activity needs the predecessor activity to be completed before it can start the activity. So you see in the first case, in the diagram, the circles are representing the nodes and the edges or the directed arrows are representing the activities. So you see, every activity starts from a node and ends in a node. So for the first activity A, there are no predecessor. So we start at node 1 and we go to node 2 and activity A is marked there. For B and C activities, A is the predecessor. This signifies that B and C activities can be done simultaneously once A activity is complete. So just look at the diagram and you can see that the 2 activities B and C are starting simultaneously from the node second node 2 once the activity A is over, and activity B and activity C are has started simultaneously. Then we go to the next step, activity D. The predecessor activity is B. So B activity finishes at node 3 and D activity starts from there. It ends in node 6. Let us see for E activity, the predecessor is C. So it starts from node 4 and it goes to node 6. Why do we give 6? We will see in the next stage. For activity F, also the predecessor node is C. That means activities E and F can start simultaneously. So we have seen from node 4, E and F starts simultaneously. Next, for activity G, the requirement is D, E and F. So all the 3 activities need to be completed before G starts. So we see D here, E here, and F is connected by a dotted line. So this dotted line represents a dummy activity to signify that the F activity's completion is required to start the activity G. So this is represented as a dummy activity, which requires no time. It's a 0 time. It is just represented for diagrammatic representation to signify that aspect, that it is a predecessor to that G activity. And for H, we see we have G as its predecessor. So it sends to the finish. I hope you have understood this. So let us see the next example. Here we see A and B activity both do not need any predecessor. In the previous case, it was different. In this case, we see A and activity can start simultaneously. So we see it has started simultaneously from a single node, and it goes to two nodes, two different nodes. For C and D, the completion of activity A is the producer, I mean. So activity, once the A is complete, we can simultaneously start C or D. So we see here C and D, and it goes to two different nodes. For E, activity B is the producer. So E activity starts once B is over. For F, activity D, and for G, B and C. You see B and C. So there is a dummy activity joining B to this node to signify that G activity requires completion of B and C. So this way we can prepare the activity diagrams. I hope this is clear to you. So we go to a technique to explain a technique which is termed as the program evaluation review technique. These charts consist of a network of boxes and arrows. The boxes, they represent the activities, and the arrows, they represent the dependencies of the task we have seen in the activity diagram. But part charts, they represent those nodes as rectangular boxes. And in case of part charts, they have three time estimates: the pessimistic time, the likely time, and the optimistic time. From these three time estimates, we try to prepare a single estimate according to this. We can see in the thing that the three estimates, the optimistic, the likely, and the pessimistic estimates. Three estimates are given in case of part, in case of this technique. The optimistic represents the minimum time required for the task. The pessimistic represents the maximum time required for the task. And the likely estimate represents the average time. That means how much time should that task require, should certain, considering certain aspects or maybe from the historical data. So to calculate a single estimate from these three estimates, we have this equation where the most likely time is given a more weightage, and we calculate a single estimate. Now let us go back to this activity network representation. This representation somewhat shows a representation of a part following the part technique form, but here we do not have three time estimates. You see, we have got only one estimate, but in case of part representation, there are three estimates for each activity. And in this case, in part, activity diagram had represented nodes and arrows, and the arrows represented the activities, but in case of part charts, the rectangular boxes, they are representing the activities. So we got to convert this into a activity diagram. So let us see. So this is the converted activity diagram, which we have seen just now. So you see, we have nodes, the activity duration, and the activity name. So the arrows are representing the activities and the nodes are representing on the points to denote the start of an activity, the end of an activity. So the problem represented here is represented in the form of a activity diagram here in this. Now here here from this diagram, I will show you how we will find the duration of the project. You see there are many paths from start to the finish. We can see 3 paths from the start to the finish. One is this. The second is this. And the third we see from A to E and then to the finish. So from this diagram, we will try to find out which is the critical path and which will give us the duration of the project. To find out this, each node has to be represented in this form. The name of the node, and EF the earliest finish and LF denotes the latest finish. The start node is represented as S and the activities as A, B, C, D. And what is the earliest finish? The earliest finish is determined by adding the activity time from this node to the next node. So from S to A, the earliest finish is 0 plus 15, 15. From A to B, it is 15 plus 45, 60. From A to D, it is 15 plus 30, 45. From B to C, it is 60 plus 105, that is 165. Similarly, from A to E, it is 15 plus 60, 75. Then from C to F, we have 165 plus 120, that is 285. Similarly, from A to D, it is 15 plus 30, 45. From D to F, it is 45 plus 45, we have 90. So these are the earliest finishes we have calculated. Now how we calculate the LF, the latest finish? The latest finish is calculated from the finish node to the previous node by subtracting the duration of the activity. So now let us see from F to C. From finish to C, it is 285 minus 120, it is 165. From C to B, it is 165 minus 105. From C to F, it is 165 minus 0, it is 165. From F to D, it is 165 minus 45, it is 120. From B to A is having 3 time estimates. You see, one from B to A, the other is D to A, and the other is E to A. Let us see now what is the time estimate. From B to A, it is 60 minus 45, 15. From D to A, it is 120 minus 30, that is 90. And from E to A, it is 285 minus 60, that is 225. Out of these 3 time estimates, we are supposed to take the least. So the least is 15, that is 60 minus 45, 15. So we write 15 here. And from A to S, it is 15 minus 15, that is 0. So once we have calculated the earliest finish and the latest finish, the critical path is designated where earliest finish is equal to the latest finish. So in this project or in this diagram, we can see the critical path is from node S to A to B, B to C, and C to finish. So the critical path is given this, as shown as this, and the duration of the project is 285 days. Hope this is clear to you. So you can try your own examples. So this is the explanation of the critical path method. So from the activity network representation, the minimum time to complete the project is the maximum of all paths from start to finish. That we have already seen. We have seen how to calculate the earliest start. Then we have seen how to calculate the latest start time, that is EF, and finish time, and the latest finish. So after calculating this, we have found out the critical path. There is another concept called the slack time. The slack time represents the time that a task may be delayed without affecting the finish time or end time of the project. So this is termed as the slack time. Now let us go back to the diagram to explain what is the slack time. We can see here this duration is 60 days and the total finish time is 285 days. So this activity of 60 days may be extended to a period of 200 or maybe 250 or maybe 250 days, because this does not affect the project duration. So the slack time in this activity, in the case of this activity, is 285 minus 60. 285 minus 60. So 225 days slack time is provided for this activity. Is possible for this activity, which will not affect the duration of the project. So this is the concept of slack time. So this slack time actually gives you the flexibility for the project, and critical tasks are those which has zero slack time. We have already seen in the diagram. And the definition of the critical path: a path from the start node to the finish node containing only critical tasks is called the critical path, and it denotes the duration of the project. Next, we go to something which tells us about the allocating the resources to the activities. So Gantt charts are those charts which shows us the allocation, resource allocation to the activities. It represents, it's a bar chart sort of a thing, and you can see on the horizontal side the dates, and on the vertical side the tasks and activities are listed. So you see the activity on one side, from which date to which date it should cover, and which from the then activity 2 starts from this to this, should end by this. So this chart was developed by Henry L. Gantt, and so the name was given this. The resources allocated to activities include staff, hardware, software. So once there is a chart preparation of this sort, we can definitely, at a glance, we can identify which activities will start today or tomorrow, by when, and resource allocation is very easy once we prepare a chart in this manner. The bars are drawn along a timeline, as you can see here. These are timelines. And the length of each bar is proportional to the duration of the time planned of the activity. So these length depends on the time given here. So Gantt charts are representation of a schedule of the project and is very helpful in planning and resource utilization. Part charts are used for monitoring the progress of the activities. We have seen the part chart already. So Gantt chart and part chart forms a very important part of project scheduling. So thank you for your patient hearing. Would like to know how you have enjoyed this session. We'll see you again.